Thank you to everyone who's joining us today. I'm Kyoko M, as you mentioned. Why don't we start with Laura?
With Laura. Hi, I am Laura VanArendonk Baugh. Nobody likes to pronounce or spell that, so I'm Laura VAB in most of my online spaces. And I write so many things. I'm here probably today mostly representing epic fantasy. I also write nonfiction related to my day job. I write other flavors of fantasy and other flavors, a few other genres, and I've just started dabbling in game writing. So that's me.
Wonderful. Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan or Meg. I am a fan fiction writer and I have been writing fan fiction for about 25 years now. So I've seen it all.
And Hailey.
I don't know if I'm showing.
You are. You
See
are. We
you.
can see and hear you.
Okay, okay. I can't see myself, so I'm just trusting you all. Um, I'm Hailey Piper. I'm a writer of horror novels, novellas, short stories. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been in publishing for 5 or 6 years now, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Okay. And I am the author of the Black Parade Urban Fantasy series and the of Cinder and Bone science fiction series. I'm also a contributor to two Marvel anthologies, the Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, and then I'm sorry, Captain America: The Shield of Sam Wilson. So that kind of gives you all a little bit of background. So we have a really nice group of people who we're all from different walks of life. So we're definitely going to give you some perspective. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to I'm going to ask questions and that'll fill up like the first about 45 minutes or so. And then so if you have questions, please hold those to the end and then we'll open the floor to you. If you don't have them, that's okay. We'll continue the discussion until our hour is up. That's just because how that's going to work. If you don't want to go on camera and ask your question, you're very welcome to put that into the chat. We'll be checking that intermittently as we chat and we talk. So same thing. If you have any questions, if you think of anything, little comments in there, we'll be reading that as we go along. But otherwise, we are going to go ahead and get started. So the very first question I have for you guys is that wonderful intro that Jasmine did is very relevant. So first of all, do you believe in writer's block itself as the term that we're going to use it for? We'll define that as anything that is causing you to hesitate in continuing to write whatever it is that you need to write. So, do you believe in writer's block? That's our first question. And just oh, that's right. Format wise, jump in as it occurs to you.
I'm first going to push back on the definition. So, yeah, hi, I'm going to be the problem person in this panel. But anything that impedes your writing, I think is too because then yes, of course it exists because my keyboard could break and now that's right. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to like can we get a little more specific on what we're how we're defining writer's block because I think I'm not just being a jerk, although that might be true too. But but I think it's actually relevant to the discussion because there can be different causes, and we need to come back at those in different ways. So
So I would say if we go by the general one that most people use, the idea of writer's block is that there is something that it's either a plot hole, it's a difficult character, it's not, if it's being too predictable, there are different smaller elements inside of your story where you have to figure out why it's caused you to stop. So most of the time, writer's block has to do with a stop in getting stuck in a rut, if that makes any more sense. If that is a little less generic and vague, I guess, what causes you to get stuck in a rut in which you do not know what to do next, if that helps? Is that any better?
I it is for what I want to say. I don't know. You guys can, but I think, but I think I'm being a little pedantic because I think it does matter. So I think there's actually two major reasons that people stop being productive in writing, however we want to describe this. And when I've had these conversations with people, one is there's something wrong with the story. So characters being a problem. I write myself into a whatever. We can talk about those. And the other is something major happened in life and my creative energy is engaged in survival rather than creative production. And I way to start this on a cool note, Laura. But I was talking with a young writer who was really stuck, and she was really worried about she wasn't being able to get the words out, and writer's block, and has she lost it forever, and all of these things. And then while I'm having this conversation and kind of mentoring, she comes out, she lost a child 3 months ago. I'm like, writer's block is not your problem, okay? Like you're having survival and grief and all of those things are normal, and the writing will come back. So, and I frequently, we saw this a lot in 2020, all of these things, and I think we just need to, there are different things that go into this. So yeah, sorry, I just started the panel super heavy. Let me back off now and let everybody have conversations.
No, that's why I asked, because again, we want to know those differences. That is absolutely true. I have never considered, I've considered life events versus block. Block, I consider, okay, you know what? That's
Right.
just exactly what I thought of. So the difference between craft and versus life. So what we're going to talk about is when you a block in the craft itself, not ones that are caused by, like you said, emotional distress. That is a type of writer's block, but it's one in which it's not the actual act of writing itself. It is an emotional component that's
Fixing my
holding you back.
plot
So
is
I
not
think
going to solve that issue. Yeah, yeah.
correct. Exactly. Okay, so what we're going to focus on in this panel is the things that affect you in craft wise versus, like you said, life events absolutely affect how you write. Like I have not, the first time I wrote fan fiction this week was yesterday because I've been so stressed out between my personal life and my job that I wasn't in a headspace I could do it. I was just
Yeah.
like, get past the week. And when I got to the week, I got all my stuff done and I went, finally, my brain can now enter that space. Okay, Megan, what do you think?
I definitely believe in writer's block because I've had moments that I can recognize as I know what I want to do, and I write it and I realize this is not it. And I'm looking at the words going, this is absolutely not it. This is not where I want to go. And I don't know where I want to go, but I know it's there. And it's like really hard to describe. It's like there's this big, a literal wall, like a barricade in your mind where you know the good thing is on the other side. You know what you want is on the other side, but you just can't access it. And I have to kind of sit and be patient, and I got to walk away to get to the thing I know will help me continue the story.
Awesome, awesome. How about you, Haley?
Yeah, I definitely agree that it exists. My perception of it is less the obstacle in front of you, because and it's funny because that was the first time I encountered writer's block outside of myself, was like being little, watching Muppet Babies, and they get into a situation where there's writer's block, and it's literally a giant block in the way of
Mhm.
their imagination version of what's happening. But for me, I think it more is like kind of like getting getting your car stuck in the mud. Like it just kind of, something's holding you back, and you have kind of more about figuring out what that is. So you can kind of keep going, because if you want to write, then that drive is still there, and that's what's really frustrating. It's just that you can't keep moving.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I believe in it, and I would define it as something where there's an internal conflict in you in which it's keeping you from moving forward. And you have to basically identify what that is, and that's the harder part. It's kind of the way you almost approach it when you get sick, of like when you go to a doctor and you look at the symptoms and try to figure out what it is from there. So moving on to our next question, what is your first step when you start to get stuck in a story? And that can look at any way that you want, and it doesn't have to be anything conventional. But what is usually your very first step when you get stuck?
I walk away. I literally have to stop because I have a nasty habit of deleting things, and it just I've learned from that. I have like something called a hold document now, that if I want to delete, I put it in the hold document. I never delete anything, but I know my first step, if I get stuck, I need to stop and maybe come back to it later, because sometimes it never goes well if I keep going and I'm frustrated. I have to first thing is I stop.
That sounds a lot healthier than mine. I bang my head against the wall a bunch creatively trying to figure it out. Like, it's because a lot of this stuff is like a puzzle, and a lot of it feels like, okay, well, I've solved writing puzzles before. I figured it out. And it takes like 4 or 5 tries at something before I'm realizing, oh, this isn't working and I've been wasting my time and spinning my wheels. So then I will also, yeah, walk away from it.
Oh, I also
Usually
still bang
to
my head against the wall.
oh, okay.
No, still, but then we stop.
But yeah, usually just to it's something with it isn't working, and forcing it isn't going to fix it is kind of how I look at it. And sometimes that's as simple as go take a shower, go do a chore, and your brain will sort it out. Sometimes it's not that quick. Sometimes it takes weeks or months or years to figure out what's wrong with that particular thing. But it is one of those things where it's like your brain kind of has to sort it out, or you need to kind of refresh yourself a bit. And it just, yeah, it just needs to, you need to not be stuck there. You need to not be sitting there staring at it, wondering what to do.
So I'm going to be a little contrarian again, and yeah, because apparently that's my role here on this panel. But first of all, I solve most of my writing problems with fair trade dark chocolate, so that's just my universal panacea for everything. Yeah, but Hailey said, that she wasted, was wasting. I'm going to say I truly believe no writing is wasted. And, there's a scene I'm working on right now for a series that's already sold and needs to be done, and it's not yet. So no, not that I'm stressing or anything. It's this really, really pivotal scene, and I think I'm on my 7th or 8th version of it. And I don't say it's not wasted just to make myself feel better, although that's probably helping. But every time I go through that, I'm finding why that's not working either, and that's helping me get toward, what will work. And that's unusual for me. I'm not usually that kind of rewriter. This is just a really sticky, very frustrating. It's fine. I'll be in a corner after this panel scene, and but going through all of those iterations, 1000% what Megan said, like the instinct is to delete everything. That never happened, but that's not the best solution. And so, I've got a whole document, same thing. This is a huge pile of trash that I'm not using, but I can go back to it later and pick out pieces that will work, or I can look at it and know why it's not working or whatever. So good. It's still diagnostic, even if it doesn't end up in the final product.
Excellent, excellent answer. I also favor I call it put it in a drawer, or the general term is put it in a drawer. So very similar. If I am sitting there and I'm like, this is not working, it is not getting on the page the way I need it to. Okay. Mine usually lasts. It depends on my deadline, but usually it's anywhere between. Just to give the people watching some context, I do anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks. If it's really bad and I have enough time, I might do between 3 and 4 weeks. But usually, what's a period do you feel is average for you? When if you're kind of like just putting it in a drawer for a little bit.
For me, it's usually days, because I'm also a person, I work on more than one project at a time. And one of my best solutions is, great, you get to sit in a corner and think about what you've done while I play with this other project, and then we'll come
Yes,
back. And it gave a chance.
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah.
Because I write fan fiction, it's kind of, I can put it away until I feel it's speaking to me. So I don't really, I mean, I have my self-imposed deadlines that I try to follow, but I don't really have any real deadlines, just what I say. So I kind of put it away until like my brain is done enough to forget, and then I reread it. And sometimes I go, oh, what was I talking about? This is great. Keep going. So the goal is for me to kind of like, however long it takes for me to forget. So a couple days, maybe a week, and I will open it and go, oh, I'm brilliant. Let's keep going.
Perfect. I'm so glad that works. What about you, Haley?
Um, I'm kind of in a combination situation of those two. I do have deadlines from publishers, but um, I can't, like, my thing is also though, like, it needs the time it needs, and I don't think the art can be forced. So it's just like if it has to take weeks, it takes weeks. If I have to essentially drop it and write something else for the publisher, then so be it. If because I would rather that particular piece of writing got to be its best self. And if that has to wait, I mean, there's stuff I've put away that for over a year, and I just haven't come back to it because it's just like it needs it. And when I come back to it, maybe I will be like, oh, why did I drop this? It was actually going really well. But we don't know. We don't know anything. We just act like we do because we create these worlds and characters. But I feel like we're constantly being surprised and ambushed by the art itself.
Yeah, I think it's about perspective. Like sometimes when you kind of take your hands off the wheel a little bit, you can see a little bit further. So after you've done that first step, what do you usually do next to see if you can get yourself out of it? If time is not a factor, what's your go-to next move of like, okay, I did my drawer thing, I came back, I'm still kind of struggling. So what is your next step after that point?
I guess I should
The
go first
opposite.
since everyone else went first
Oh, go
before.
Haley, go. Yes.
Um, I kind of try to sometimes look over what I've already done, um, because a lot of times the solution is somewhere back elsewhere. Look, retracing the character steps, retracing the plot, maybe looking ahead at other notes, trying to get a sense of like what's the big picture here. Why am I getting stuck in this one scene when there's an entire story or book to figure out? And sometimes the solution is there. Sometimes it's like, oh, it was right there in that one paragraph. This little detail about a character I forgot is the solution. I didn't even put it there on purpose, but it's just, one of those things that spills out while you're writing. Um, yeah, I think that's my next step is just to kind of review everything and see. And again, sometimes it's like Megan said, where it's just like, there was never a problem. It just felt like there was a problem. This was actually working just fine.
Um,
Oh, there you go.
I actually will flip and do the opposite. So we're all familiar with the phrase, "You can't edit a blank page," right? You can't steer a parked car. Um, and so I will sometimes just sit down and be like, "Okay, I'm going to keep typing, and it doesn't matter how bad the words are, I'm going to keep typing." And frequently, that is enough to because the goal is not produce the world's finest work of literature. The goal is to vomit onto the page. And that's enough to get around the editor in my head that's stopping me, and I can just, get it down. And now that I've got it down, even if it's awful, now I've got something to work with, which is a lot better than I had a moment ago. Um, and the other thing that I will point out, and I don't know, I'd be really curious, like actually, how many of us are plotters and outliners, and how many of us are just right by the seats of the pants people? What do we got?
Yes, so we will be getting to that further down
Oh,
in our
never mind.
questions.
I
So
retract the
that's
question. We'll come back.
That's okay. No,
So,
no, no, that's good. So we can start that conversation now. So what she's talking about is so typically the way that we describe how people write, there are people who fly by the seat of their pants, and that's called a pantser. And then there are people who are very heavy into outlining. They know the whole story, like very detailed before they start, and that's called a plotter. So the art, it's not an argument, but is usually you're either a pantser, a plotter, or you're just a percentage of each one. So for me personally, it depends on the book. The Black Parade series was very structured for me. Now there was one of like if you think about it the way that I thought about it, I knew really big chunks of story. I always knew where it started, middle, end, and then there were some surprises in the middle. But for the most part, I would say that one was about 70% planned. The of Cinder and Bone series, however, was more like 50, 60% planned, where I kind of knew the general overview, but I got on those pages and I was like, oh, wow, it really morphed as I was doing it. So I would say, yeah, I'm more like a 40% pantser, 60% plotter. Most of my plots, I kind of just, they stay in my head like a cloud. And I usually don't outline, oddly enough, until halfway through the book, which is very weird. Most people don't do it that way. But for whatever reason, I think my brain just like, no, dump it all out until we get to about halfway through. And then when I get to halfway through, it goes, okay, cool. Now that I know all the stuff in the structure of how I decided to put it on the page, now you can go back and do structure and like look at how you want to do that. So yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that now? So Haley, are you a plotter, pantser, or your percentage?
I'm also a mix of the two. But I think it makes sense actually what you're saying about not outlining until you get to halfway through, because what I typically do is I do outline the whole book from the start, and I'll follow that a little bit until a point, and then at that point I've learned the characters a little bit, I've learned what I'm doing a little bit, and then I end up changing the entire rest of that outline, and I'll go a little bit further, and then that happens again. I would never call myself a true pantser, because I always need that that layout, but then I change it as I go. So I think it makes sense actually to do that, because like now you understand things a bit better. You can plan a little more. But I kind of have just those little stops and starts where I'm just kind of figuring out a little more of the railroad track ahead of me before I keep going forward.
How about you, Laura?
So by nature, I am a right by the seat of the pants. Just let's go and find things out. But for efficiency, because I do like to get paid, I've had the habit now of I'll have between 3 and 5 bullet points, and those 3 and 5 bullet points might get me through like a multi-book series. So it's very not detailed, but I now have a little bit more arc than I naturally would have started with. I have a theory. No, I don't. I have a really vague hypothesis about it. But let's hear from Megan first.
99% pantser. I
Got
have
it.
tried. I have bought books on outlining. I have tried to sit down
It's
and do
okay
it.
though. Like everybody, there is
I know
no one way to write. So please
there
don't
is.
feel guilty. I tell people that all the time. Don't feel guilty.
I just
However
think it's
it gets there.
hilarious.
Yeah, I
I
know. No,
try.
that's cool.
I've written over 100,000 word, 200,000 word fanfics, and people will sit and comment, "Can't wait to see what happens next." I'm thinking, me too, because
Right?
like I start writing with a scene, and typically that scene is the climax, and literally I'm writing to get to that scene, and I'm writing what happens after.
Well,
I
and I think
can't
you're
plan.
writing fanfic,
Hmm.
and which tends to be a lot, as you said, 100,000, 200,000 words, and tends to be a lot more. I don't want to like minify, but slice of life, or a little bit more like let's just do character explorations because you're working in an established world. You don't have to spend as much time with the world building and things. And I'm not. Um, so that by nature, fanfic is a lot more. I think it lends itself to that more
Unless
than
you're
a
doing an
really
alternate
tightly.
universe.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
even then,
they use.
you
Oh
still have
God,
some
yeah.
parameters. People are still coming in with some established expectations, and the genre itself, not the genre, but the form of fanfic is more friendly to that. And in no part, in nothing of what I'm saying here is meant to be disparaging in that way. It's just I think it invites pantsing more than I got a call from an editor. They want this story in 2 weeks. It needs to fit this theme, kind of thing more. And I think that's awesome. Like, yeah.
The
So
Thing I
downside
like
to it
about fan
is,
fiction. Yeah, the spontaneity is what I like
Mhm.
about it. It's like seriously, I'll be in the middle of writing a fanfic chapter and like a light will click on and I go, "Oh, I just thought of something as I do." No, fanfiction is very good for again, spontaneous thoughts,
yeah,
spontaneous ideas and things like that where
yeah.
you could just kind of like go after something that occurs to you. And again, you're in a space in which that because the expectation is, oh no, we're just here to have fun. So you don't have
Right.
to do you can choose to do all the things that you do in a book that you want to
Put
do
the
in fan fiction.
outlining books down. You don't need them. You're having a good
oh
Yeah,
time. Like,
no, I try.
exactly. So
I just wanted to see what would happen if I did. But what I noticed in
yeah.
talking to other fan fiction writers is that they have a hard time completing their stories
mhm.
because they often write themselves into plot holes because
Mhm,
it's really hard as a pantser to get to the end. That can be a
mhm,
very challenging thing because a lot of people, I'm not saying everyone, a lot of fan fiction writers do not end their stories. And I try really hard. Like after years of writing it, I've kind of figured out how to leave my plot open enough that I don't get trapped. Because I've found that's like
yeah.
a huge thing that happens in the fanfiction community. They get to a point and it's like, I don't know where to go because I wrote myself into this hole because I
And
was spontaneous.
I'm going to point out that is not a fanfic writer phenomenon. That is a writer phenomenon. It's that fanfic writers are able to start sharing before they get to the point where they need to
Hmm.
have the story finished, so it's more visible. But
Yep.
a lot of very traditional intentioned writers also do not finish their stuff. And that's a whole nother semester's worth of topic that we can deal with separately. But yeah, so
Very much so. So, typically, first I'm going to ask, what do you? Sorry, just very weird notification. Um, when you know when you've looked at the problem and you've identified that it's character based, is there a certain set of things that you like to do to try and get yourself out of that? So when you're blocked, if it's caused by a character, if you've ever experienced it being caused by the character instead of the plot, is there a certain set of things that you like to do for that in particular? So when it's character based, like you're just either their arc is not coming together the way you wanted to. Maybe you're writing them too passively. Maybe they're doing something that you didn't really want them to do, but now, or you thought there's something you thought you wanted them to do, but now you don't want them to do it anymore. So, do you have any particular methods or top or tips for that? And it's
What the character does is the right thing, I think. I'm because I have written things where I'm like, I had a plan, I wrote the character doing what I planned, and then I'm like, okay, done with writing session. And then I will be stressed and bothered the entire time, like from there until I start writing, because that wasn't something the character would do. Even though it was going along with what I planned, it wasn't right for them. And then I have to figure out, what would they actually do? What would happen next with them actually like acting in character? And then sometimes that changes the whole rest of the story. But for me, it's just like, I can't make them do stuff that they wouldn't do. Like sometimes there are options at least, but if there's something that's just like, no, they wouldn't do that, then it kind of that can stop the story. But it can also make the story continue, because maybe that little change, maybe that little giving way to the character and their personality, and setting off that different chain of events, reinvigorates the story and prevents future writer's block with that particular work.
Sometimes I feel like I just say sometimes I'm just the writer. Like I'll finish a writing session and I'll go, I don't know why this character did that. This is not what I intended. This character completely took control. Like it just I have to sit down and examine like, well, why did that happen? Why did that character do that? Because that wasn't my plan, but this must have felt right in the moment. So do I give in to that? Do I trust this character? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it sounds really crazy because yes, I am the one at the keyboard. I am the one writing, but I am not in control. Like
you're just
sometimes I will
transcribing. Yeah.
It's
I'm
yes.
just transcribing.
Yeah.
Or the other solution is, you kill them off. You pull a Shonda Rhimes, you just
You're a
you
problem,
just,
pal.
no. I mean, if I'm looking at some TV shows and I am a rewatcher and I have learned something from the Shonda Rhimes world, it's like, oh, you made the character do something they wouldn't do, and then you wrote them off. So jokingly, if the character's a problem, take them out. But in all seriousness, like sometimes you are just the transcriber. You kind of, like Hailey said, you got to kind of trust that character, and sometimes it's not going to make sense to your brain, but you might just have to go with it, and it might change what you imagine for that story, and that might be the best decision, even though your plan is now gone.
When people will ask, are your stories plot based or are they character based or whatever? And I'm always like, I legitimately don't understand the question, like, because the plot is what these people do, so you can't separate the two of them. And I've never understood, honestly, the dichotomy that people try to put in there. And so exactly what you guys are saying, like if something's not working, it's because I'm trying to treat those as two separate things rather than as one. And so I need to get out of their way. And it doesn't matter what I think the story should be. What matters is what they're doing. And if they're doing something that's not in character, or that doesn't further their own goals, or doesn't fit with their own inhibitions or morals or whatever, then of course there's going to be a problem, because I can't make the plot be something that's not what these people are doing.
I would say the reason reason that people separate that, and sometimes I do that in my questions as well, is that I'm not talking about story and character are hand in hand, but I think we think of it in more of a cinematic way. So I'll use movies as a comparison. There are certain directors who are I'm character. I want to construct a really detailed person. You're going to know everything about them. You are here for some kind of emotional payoff of some sort, in which the story the draw of the story is the character itself. And then you have people who are like, let's say Zack Snyder, for example. He's all plot, all glitz. I'm here for the spectacle. And so I think that's why sometimes we separate that out in when we talk about writing, but I agree that those are completely integrated in a book or in fiction more so than like in the movie perspective, because I think that's how it colors that question a lot. Is like I said, like Christopher Nolan is someone who's usually in the exact middle. Usually he builds up a lot of really detailed characters and you really understand him and there's a lot of emotional payoff. And then he has very stylized and like action plots and that kind of thing. And then, like I said, you have directors who fall anywhere in between those two things. So I think that's why sometimes that question is sort of separated. So, but to your point though, we're not going to do the plot one then because it's kind of redundant.
Yeah.
So I would
Like
say,
my book is not meant to carry special effects. Okay, like what
correct.
you're saying, like there are movies and it's just about the spectacle. It's not even about the story, because if you actually stop and think about the story, it's dumb and it doesn't make sense. But the special effects are big. Okay, so
Any
my book
Michael
doesn't have
Bay
special effects.
movie.
Right. There we go.
Honestly.
And so my book, I can't just shake the camera a lot during an action scene and okay, now it's fine, we move on, right? And so I think that's there's my beef. There's my little soapbox.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because, like you said, I think it's because it comes from a place of when we talk more about movies than we do about books. Because again,
Yeah.
in books, it can be a lot more nuanced too. Like in a movie, you kind of do have to pick a lane a little bit. Like either you're going to be in the middle where you're doing equal plot and equal character, or you just want to do character, you just want to do plot. In books, it can be all the things in between. Whereas movies, there's all these different expectations based on that. So moving forward, our next question is, do you guys have any exercises or any particular like thing that our viewers could look up when they get stuck?
Fair trade dark chocolate. That's all I got.
Um,
Yes, always a good one.
I try to stay kind of like away from some writing exercises. Like my big thing is if I get stuck, like I writing for me is very much in my head. And the neurospices coming out of where like I live a lot of my life in my head with the writing, with art and things like that. So what I have to do is I have to get out of my head and physically into my body for a little bit to take a break. And I think writing exercises are great, but like you have to kind of know yourself as a person. If you're spending a lot of time in your head during this creative process, then you need to find something that takes you out of your head and into your body. For me, I do aerials. And because the gym wasn't enough, like I literally have to hang upside down to say, okay, I'm focused on not falling on my head, literally, because that's all that matters. So I don't crash on my face. So, like, it could be taking a walk, it could be um, crocheting. Maybe you'll get in aerials. Maybe you need to go for a run, something, but you have to kind of like know yourself. Like, are writing exercises really going to benefit you? Or are they going to put you in your head more and make it harder for you to come back to those things?
Sure. So let me amend the question then. What are some exercises that you like to do in general instead of just doing the writing one? So I brought that up in case there is someone who because there are some people who like to go and do prompts or they do smaller things that kind of like open their brain back up. But if there is anything that you do in your personally as well that you like to do at that point, please share that as well.
Yeah, like I think that's the important point to kind of, because if we are spending a lot of time in our heads and the words on the page are tethered to that, but I think it's important to remember the world outside and like feel those tactile sensations, the sense and touch and sights and everything that isn't the computer monitor, and keep that reacquaintance. But I also think that's part of that is kind of giving your brain a break and also leaving the door open in there for idle thoughts to kind of creep in, observations, little things like that. And then just like one of the most important things to me is like I'll be doing stuff that has nothing to do with writing. I'm not thinking about writing, and something creeps into my head. I write it down because that I think teaches your brain be like, yeah, it's okay to give me these things. It's okay to let those thoughts in. A lot of that stuff just sits in a hold file. Um, I have hundreds of pages of that kind of stuff, but it's useful in the future, hopefully, or maybe it isn't, but at least it gets it takes away the pressure. I think it takes away the demand and expectation, because like, no, you don't have to just be writer, literally, like, stuck on your desk. You can go be a whole person who has other parts of your life besides this.
And I'm
Okay,
going to
that's
say, to
really
just
good. Yeah.
piggybacking off everything Hailey just said was excellent. Just piggybacking off that too, like there's a lot of weird expectations in the writer space, especially depending on what community you're in online. And I'm just going to put it like, I literally can't tell you right now how many published titles I have. A lot. Like I have written millions of words. I don't write every day. Okay. I'm still a real writer, even though I don't write every day. Sometimes I don't think about stuff about writing. I just live my life. And then sometimes I think of things and I write them down for later, because do write them down because you won't remember them in 3 weeks. And sometimes I go for a hike and then I come back and I'm refreshed and I'm ready to go in there. And I've had some new thoughts on how to describe this scene in the woods because I went on a hike or whatever. And so, like, do not feel that, oh, I have to write X many words a day in order to be a writer and I have to be at no, like there's so many ways to do this. And if it's happening, then it's happening. So there we go.
And also,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
I've been able to incorporate aerials into my stories because I started fan fiction. Before that, I ended up in pole dance. I incorporated that. And it was interesting that this thing I did to take me out of my head has become something I can incorporate and give me inspiration on. So
Yeah.
like we're saying, like you never know where you're gonna find inspiration. It might be, you take a cooking class and you see inspiration. Like you said, walk in the woods. You're gonna, oh, this what I'm seeing right now will be perfect to describe my scenes. So sometimes
And
those
even if
things
it's
happen
not, your
outside
brain
of
is
it.
better for it. Like,
Oh
go.
yeah.
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 You
I,
to make art, you have to go out and live life, I think
Yes.
is the
Yes.
one of the key things.
Yes.
oh, I
Sorry.
remember. I think it's a line in a song. If you can't write, if you can't relate. I love that. That's in Loser. That's in Loser, actually. Matter of fact, for me personally, and I wanted to throw this out there because I didn't get to it in our other question. So one of the things that I like to do is not a writing exercise, but I go to Chuck Wendig's blog. So Chuck Wendig, I'm going to put it in the chat so you can see how that's spelled. He has one of the best little writing blogs, because what he does is not only is it free, it's in list form and it's in short form. So it's so, for example, the one I go to all the time is 25 ways to unstick a stuck story, and he gives you practical advice, 25 lines of it, and they're all super short and they're funny. They're funny as hell.
Yes.
Chuck Wendig, if you've never heard of him, is hysterical. He's a really, really clever writer. He is really funny. He has great books as well. But all of that is available in two different formats. So most of it is up on his blog and it's for free. But also he put together a few books that are in same thing. They're real short. They're just little bitty books. I'm pretty sure they're fairly affordable as well. And he put all of that into a book form. If you're one of the people who's very tactile and you just don't like to read it on a web page. And I love that as a resource just because he gives you so many different solutions that usually either, even if it's not on that page in particular, whatever is bothering you and causing you to get stuck, sometimes it will trigger a thought. It'll go, oh, you know what? He mentioned something that's in this scene. Oh, I didn't think about it that way. Okay, let me go take a look at that. And then sometimes it can just lead you to a point where you go, oh, you know what? I didn't think of it that way. Let me just go take a look. So I like to offer him as a resource as well. And he's also just a genuinely decent person. He hasn't really had any like weird controversies or anything. So I like to offer that as something that you guys can take home if you wanted to take a look for a particular solution. So the next question, we're coming up on time, so I'm going to do one more of just ours. So if you have questions about now, I would like you to start kind of thinking about them, and then if we'll see how the chat goes if people have questions that they would like to ask. And so okay, the next thing I want to talk about is our favorite plot holes. Plot holes are awful and no one likes them, but they naturally occur because we're all fallible human beings. So, when you encounter a plot hole in your story, what is the first thing that you try to see if you can, if it can be eradicated, if it can be downsized, if it can be changed, that kind of stuff. So, what do you like to do when you run into your plot hole? I'll start if
More
it's
world
difficult
building.
because it is. Okay. So as I said before, a lot of the times I'll use a Chuck Wendig, any of those, because sometimes that'll, like I said, it'll trigger a thought. But that's usually the point where I immediately go to the outline that I was talking about. So like I said, for the most part, I'm somebody who writes between 40 to 50% of a book, and then I stop and then I outline. And it really is still not a very detailed outline. Most of the time it'll be, okay, I am now going to do my chapter by chapter synopsis. And I do that for pacing and I do it for character tracking. So I can go, okay, here's where the character started, here's where they are in the middle of the story. I know where they need to be. Are they on track or have I missed anything? And so that usually when I'm reviewing the outline to see where we already hit, where we're in now and where we're going to go, sometimes that will actually get me out of it because I go like, so for example, I'll use the one that I do a lot, which is my fourth book in the science fiction series I wrote. I struggled through that book the entire first half. It was murder. I was just miserable. I could not figure out why it was not coming out the way I wanted it to. And so when I hit the 50% mark, I stopped and then I reviewed it and I went, okay, I figured out what it is. One of the characters was passive instead of active. So two of the protagonists were active protagonists the whole time, but Jack was dragging the whole book along because he wasn't active. He was reacting to everything that was happening to him, and it was still action and all the things that I needed it to be, like conflict, but it wasn't him in the driver's seat. And I didn't know that on a subconscious level. I was hating the story because he was not in the driver's seat. So once I recognized that through the outline, I went back and I went, okay, so now I need to flip him back to being active. So I went back and I revised it to the point where he was then making the decisions and not simply reacting to the decisions. And once I did that, completely unblocked the rest of the book. Now again, that's just my particular example, but hopefully the answer has helped generate some of yours if you have them.
I go back and reread what I have because I am the person who does not outline. So I have to first figure out, is this actually a plot hole or is your brain not where it was when you started this? Or like, do you remember? This sounds crazy, but do you remember what you wrote? Do you remember what happened? Do you remember all those like special little nuggets you put in to call back to later? So I have to stop and I have to reread what I have to make sure, okay, like, do you actually have a plot hole? Or can you not recall all those nice, juicy little nuggets and the breadcrumbs you left behind? So that's my
Yeah,
first
review
step
is a
is
great way. Yeah,
Yeah,
reviews are really
that's
good stuff.
that's kind of how I look at it too. I'll sometimes, if there's something that I'm like, oh, that's going to be useful for what I'm planning for later, I'll like copy and paste it into like a separate section that's like secret tools to help us later, kind of things to be like, okay, this is part of the theme. You want to keep calling back to this to kind of try to stay on track. I'm this isn't super helpful if somebody has a plot hole, but I find prevention is some of the best method of that, but that only works if you're plotting a lot of it out. If you're kind of like pantsing, then you sometimes are kind of like at the whims of the characters, at the whims of the story, I think. And yeah, honestly, sometimes when there's a plot hole, I'm just like, I can't do what I wanted to do. I have to figure out something else that I want to do. Um, like that's not the most constructive way of like yeah, break your story, whatever is not really the most constructive way I think of doing it. So probably other people have better advice than that, but that's one of the things I'll do is I'll just like, yeah, let's just do something completely different. What the hell?
No, that's good. No, we want perspective.
Yeah.
It is totally good.
And I think I mean, Haley said, the best part is prevention. And I don't think you have to be a deep outliner to do that. And I think sometimes it's actually helpful to not be a deep outliner because it's easier to pick a route when you're on the ground than just be like, well, then we'll just go through the mountains and I'll fix that pass when we get there, right? And I think the more you know your characters, the more you understand your world building, the less likely you are to have a story breaking plot hole because you know that already that can't happen in your world. These people are not going to do that, or there is in fact no way that could occur in this economy, or whatever. So if you're finding a lot of plot holes, look at your characters, look at the world you've built. There's probably something wrong there rather than, oh no, surprise plot hole, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
think
I
that's
think.
Right.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Haley.
I think that's a good point, is just kind of reviewing, kind of looking at each thing that happens, like cause and effect. And like you can even, I'll actually have gone through when I've done a draft, sometimes I've gone through a book backwards to just be like, okay, what was this caused by? What was that caused by? And just kind of follow the chain of events to make sure they're all causing each other.
That's what I was gonna say is one thing that, like I said, I don't do a traditional outline. What I do is a one chap. So when I get to the halfway point, I do chapter synopsis. So I force myself to do a one pager of my book. Usually when it's almost all the way done. But again, when I do that, what happens is it allows me to look at the plot line and the pacing in one space. Because when you've already gotten down like 50,000 words, it gets so complicated for you to go back and review your own stuff, even if you're really good about, chapter breaks and this happens there. I do it because it is so easy to lose where something is in my story of like, what chapter was that scene in? Oh my God, I have 18 chapters now. I don't remember.
and to just put that in
So,
context for
like,
people who, oh, go ahead.
that
Oh,
really gets you in that really good hit. Mhm. No, keep going, keep going. I don't want
Okay.
you to lose your thought. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for people who are so in the traditional publishing world, asking for a one-page synopsis is pretty common, and it is the absolute nemesis of all authors. Like we hate them so much because I'm like mad props to you for doing that voluntarily. Because it is so hard for like I got 160,000 words of epic fantasy, and you want me to fit that on one page and make all the characters make sense and make the story make sense. Like it's so much hatred in a single page. But it's also great because as she was saying, like if you condense it down to that much, look at it and go, well, this is dumb, then it's probably dumb on the larger scale, and it's just even dumber in the larger scale. So so sometimes, the things that we hate because they're good for us. I don't know. But yeah, so mad props to you for doing that voluntarily. That's great. But think of it, as if I distill this down to its essence, does this story make sense? Does this person sound like a plausible human? That kind of thing. So
And to go back about like
Thank you. No,
preventing
no.
plot holes, the way I try to prevent them is when I start a chapter, I kind of sit down and say, what is the point of this chapter? What is this character going to do? What am I trying to communicate for this chapter? I think about what came before it and what comes after it. So that way I'm not losing myself in the words, which is nice, but I try to sit down and think like, okay, to prevent this plot hole, this chapter has a point. And I think when I finish it, did I make the point? And once I make the point, I'm going to move on. So that way that kind of helps me prevent writing myself into a plot hole.
just
All
to
right, good. That's some.
just to add
Thank
on
you
to,
so
sorry,
much. Some practical
that
stuff.
also that practice also helps with pacing. I feel like that way you're making sure you're not having a bunch of chapters that are kind of just like repeating what another chapter already accomplished.
Yes, it's good for catching repetition. Very, very good for that. So our question in the chat, so we have enough time. Do any of you get writer's block out of a loss of interest or distraction from a particular project that you're working on? Like say you're working on a project, but then you have a shiny new idea for a new project. That new shiny idea then becomes a fixation and you find yourself stuck in a rut about your current project. Thank you for shining a light on my life. It is so easy to get distracted by 700 fan fiction ideas And so I have to teach myself of like, all right, I don't want to be that person who has 700 WIPs and none of them are unfinished. So a lot of the times, if I'm stuck in my book, that is when I will flip to back to fanfic. I'm almost writing them simultaneously. But if I get stuck a really, really bad rut, I definitely turn to fan fiction. I don't want you guys to feel afraid of that thing
Mhm.
where and again, I'm neurospicy as well. Distractions are my life. It is just how I live it. I have 16 screens going. I have headphones on so no thought can occur, so I don't have an existential crisis.
Yup.
In a way, it can be very helpful. I'm gonna give you guys an example and then I'll let them answer because I don't want to hog the question. So, in about, I was gonna say when I was writing, I want to say the second novel in the Black Parade series, there were points in that book that were very difficult for me to get through, and I got stuck a few times. And so, what had happened is I had gotten an idea for a high epic fantasy a novel at the time. And normally I don't write more than one thing, but because I was so stuck in that, I went, okay, you've been stuck for a good while, like a longer than I normally am. So why don't you go ahead and start that other book? That should be fine. And what I found is that I actually was able to bounce between the two in a way that actually helped me through it because every time I got stuck on one, I would because they were two different genres, it actually kind of helped my brain reset itself. So, like I said, that was an epic high fantasy YA. The thing I was writing was it's a adult urban fantasy paranormal romance. And so bopping between the two kind of reset my brain each time I went back to a manuscript. So don't always be afraid of that. There are actually points where it can be kind of useful. Now, again, if you're someone who gets overwhelmed with a lot of ideas, in that case, it's okay to kind of sit down and say, all right, you know what? Why don't we do a priority list? What do I feel the most passionate about that I really want to write right now? Okay. Give yourself any kind of deadline for that or any kind of timeline for that that you'd like. I'll say, you know what? Let's write this idea this week. And then the next idea, I'll write that in 2 weeks. Or if I have an idea for that, let's do some notes on that. There are ways to kind of structure your life around having multiple ideas, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing for you, and it doesn't mean that you won't finish anything. Sometimes it really does mean that your brain is telling itself, hey, I'm concentrating on this so hard and it's not being productive. Why don't we think about something else? And maybe over time it'll trigger another thought, or like she said, come back with fresh eyes and you see something that either wasn't a problem at all and you thought it was and it was your headspace, or you think of another solution as you are working on something else. So definitely don't feel like that is a horrible thing or a bad thing. Distractions naturally happen to writers. They definitely happen very frequently. Now, there are some writers who are like that. I wrote my one magnum opus and never again, and that's cool. But they're not the majority. Most of us have multiple ideas that we field through our lives based on whatever timelines that we have available to us. So that's my answer. Please continue without me.
Yeah, as again, fan fiction writer, how many ways can I make this couple fall in love and be fluffy and happy? Like it's always like that. And yeah, I get distracted, but and sometimes like you have to kind of think, if you're writing for fun, have fun and write the thing. If you do not have if you do not have a deadline and you are not working with a publisher, life is short. Have fun. Please write the thing. Please enjoy yourself. If you do have a deadline or you are dedicating yourself and you're trying to get something done, then give yourself a reasonable compromise. I tell myself, you're going to write 500 words of this thing, and that's it. Or I set a timer for like an
Mhm.
hour. You're going to have an hour to indulge in the thing. And a lot of times, sometimes I indulge and realize, oh, it was literally just that one scene. I don't want to write 100,000 words about this. Or I write a sentence and I'm like, yeah, that's just much better in my head. This does not work for words right now. So like embrace the shiny thing. And again, if you don't have deadlines, live your best life. Like, honestly, with fan fiction, more likely than not, you're not getting paid. Is it nice to finish things? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you're writing fan fiction for your enjoyment. Or if you're just writing things to share for your enjoyment, please write the thing. Do not worry about your 10,000 unfinished things. They'll be fine. They'll be finished or they won't. If you do have deadlines, do not take that advice. Please please respect your editors and your publishers and secure your bag. Set a timer, write 500 words, give yourself space to feel that idea, and then try to go back to the thing. It might help fuel you. So yes, just ask yourself, do you have space and time to chase every shiny thing? If you don't, set boundaries, please.
Yeah,
I will
I
say is
am.
that everybody
Go.
needs to hear one more time. Fan fiction is free. Do not let now again, I know that your people are they love you and they love your work and they're gonna nag you. Some of them are gonna nag you if you get really popular.
They are
Don't let
not
them
paying your
pressure you.
bills.
They're thank you, thank you.
They are
So
not
again,
paying.
remember they're not. They're
No.
getting free entertainment. Now they're very enthusiastic and I'm glad
Listen,
that they love you. But if they are pressuring you, remember this is free entertainment they're getting. If you're writing fan fiction, don't let it mess with your headspace. If everybody wants you to finish something and you're not there yet, it's okay. It's free. They can find something else to read until you're ready. Sorry, go ahead, Haley.
No, I'm sorry. I was cutting into you. Yeah, I just want to go off what Megan said, which is that not every idea is a book or 100,000 words worth or whatever. Sometimes, and I think that honestly, when you get something and it seems like a really great idea, like whatever's occurring to you, write those notes down. Like have them. It's fine. And if you really, really need to work on it and you're in the middle of a big project, not everything needs to be a book. It can be a short story. I purposely, in the middle of a book, I do need that refresher. I do need things to feel clean. So I will go purposely write a short story and then come back to the book. And the book will still be there. It's not milk. It's not going to have spoiled by the time you get back to it. You can just continue writing it from there with getting that off your chest. And if you're having a lot of ideas, then just write the idea down. You don't have to write the whole thing. It's still there.
Yes, I keep a I recommend that, by the way, if you're a young and aspiring writer. I keep a document that is just ideas. And do not feel like you need, oh, it has to be, outline or I need it. No, literally open a page, dump everything you thought of in there, save it and put it in a nice place you can find it later. It is okay to do that. You do not have to write it then if you don't want to, but like literally I recommend that. Just dump it in a document, keep it somewhere.
Actually take a little
Laura.
different answer. And so I'm gonna close out being by mean Auntie Laura here. But I mentioned earlier, like it's a very common writer thing to start stories and not finish them. I'm going to say, first of all, everything that you three already said about like life is short, go enjoy your thing. I back that 100%. Also, if you find a pattern, because you were passionate about this other project at one time before you like, oh no, I'm tired with that and I want to do the new. If you have a pattern of I'm going to get so far and then quit and start something new. I'm going to get so far and I'm going to quit and start something new. That's a craft issue. That's a skill issue. You are avoiding arm day at the gym because you're better at legs or whatever. And that's what, now, if you're doing this for free and it's a hobby and you're having a great time, I don't freaking care. Live your best life. Have 900 first halves of stories and go, right? But if you have a goal of, I would like to be a career writer, you're gonna have to fix the skill issue of completing the arc. Okay. And so work on that. And that is your decision, not mine, and all of those things. So just be aware that, I'm absolutely like shiny object. I am the boyfriend and the girl in the red dress, like, all of that. Right. But, but if it's something that's happening regularly, that's telling you something about your skill set at this time. And you may or may not want to address that depending on your goals.
That's a great note to end on. A lot of what everything we've discussed here is definitely a lot of things that are going to affect how you're able to get past writer's block. Habits. So learn how you write, learn how often you like to write. As she said, do not believe anyone who tells you you have to write every day to be a writer. That is one piece of advice that some people give. The way that you get your words on the page that makes you happy, that's how you need to get it done. Whatever that method is, whatever habits you need to do, all of those are going to be your decision in the end. We are all giving you advice. Do not feel like these are rules. Do not feel like this is how you have to do it. Any way that it is productive, is making you happy, and is getting down on the page the way that you want it to get on the page. That is your method, and you stick with that. And keep in mind, it can change. It can change all the time. You can start out one place, a few years go by, you change your writing method, you change your genre, you change your character. All of these things are great, and it's just how the business goes.